In this video, we are going to discuss about Ajax. The contents that we are going to discuss in this are what is Ajax, how Ajax communicates with the server, and creating XML HTTP request object and opening the XML HTTP request object for asynchronous downloads and sending the XML HTTP request to the server. Finally, processing the return data using JavaScript and update the page content. What is Ajax? The expansion of Ajax is asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. The word asynchronous means when a request is sent to the server, the client does not wait for the response given by the server. The client will continue its execution. When the response is returned from the server, the client processes the response and processes the result. Ajax is a way of loading data from the server and selectively update the parts of a web page without reloading the whole page. That is, when the response is received from the server, the client is not going to reload the whole page. Instead, it is going to update only the parts of a web page that gets modified. So, to perform this asynchronous mode of communication, Ajax uses the browser's built-in XML HTTP request object to send and receive information to and from a web server asynchronously. So once again, asynchronous means the client send the request to the server and it won't wait for the response given by the server. The client will continue its execution without any interruption. So Ajax makes web applications smaller, faster and more user-friendly. It is a browser technology, that is, it is client-side technology. It is independent of web server. The JavaScript plays an important role in the Ajax technique. Using JavaScript, an HTML page can asynchronously make calls to the server. The server may send the response in different formats such as XML document, HTML document, plain text, or JavaScript object notation. So the word Ajax, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So the asynchronous JavaScript and XML, where the JavaScript is used for sending requests to the server asynchronously. For asynchronous mode of communication, it uses XML HTTP request object. It is part of the browser. The major Ajax-driven online applications are Gmail, Google Maps, Google Docs, YouTube, Facebook, Flickr, and other applications. Here we are going to discuss about how Ajax communicates with the server. So the request starts in the browser, that is in the client end, whenever an event occurred on a web page. When an event occurred on a web page, it triggers a request, HTTP request. That request is sent to the server using XML HTTP request object. After sending the request to the server, the client may continue its execution if no need to wait for the response from the server. And here, the server will process the request, HTTP request sent by the client. After processing, it sends the response back to the browser. Here, once the response is received from the server, the client will process the return data using JavaScript and updates the page content where it is going to affect. That is, it modifies or updates only the portion of the page. So to initiate asynchronous mode of communication in JavaScript, first the JavaScript language is used for creation. So the scripts are included in an HTML document within the script tag. So here script tag is used to embed a script within a HTML file. And here the language it specifies which language is used, which scripting language is used for creating a script. Here we are using JavaScript. Then the variable, here we are declared the variable request object. It is initially set as false. That it implies that this object is no need to be considered while loading the web page. So it is going to be considered only after processing. Then next thing, if window.xml HTTP request object. Here, window is the browser's topmost object. The window object is the in the hierarchy of the browser. First object in the hierarchy of the browser. So the XML HTTP request object is part of the window object. If the window XML HTTP request object is available, actually this XML HTTP request object is available in Mozilla Firefox, Netscape, and Google Chrome, etc. So where we can create the XML HTTP request object like this, that is new request object is equal to new XML HTTP request. Suppose the browser is not Mozilla or Firefox. Suppose if it is Internet Explorer, where the ActiveX object is used to create the XML HTTP request object. This is the syntax for creating XML HTTP request object in Internet Explorer. So here in this slide we show that how we can create a object for XML HTTP request. Then once creating the object, it has to be opened to initiate the communication with the server. So this open method has three parameters. The first parameter specifies the type of HTTP method to send a request. So there are two types of HTTP method to send request, either GET or POST. So which type of method that we are using for send a request. The second parameter is the URL. That is it specifies the URL of the requested resource. That is which resource the client wants from the server. It may be a file or any resource from the server. Then the third parameter is a Boolean parameter. It is true by default. It indicates the mode of communication between the client and server. If it is true, the mode of communication is asynchronous. If it is false, the mode of communication is synchronous. So the default mode of communication is true. It is an optional parameter. Here we are getting a request. This is an example. The request object dot open HTTP method get is used for sending the request, and we are requesting a data source, the file that we want. After opening which resource that we want, which method of HTTP method that we are going to use for sending the request, all the things specified, the object and the browser object can send it. The XML HTTP request object can send the request to the server. Right. So the next one, the properties of XML HTTP request object. These are the properties of XML HTTP request object. The first property is on ready state change. This property is used to store a function to be called automatically each time the ready state property changes. So whenever the ready state property changes, the function to be called is assigned to on ready state change. So it is automatically called. We no need to explicitly call the function. So this XML HTTP request object dot on ready state change is equal to the function to be called. So here the ready state has 5 states. Where 0 indicates request not initialized. If it is 1, the server connection established, that is the client server connection is established. And if the ready state is 2, the request is received by the server. The ready state is 3 means the server is processing the request. If the ready state is 4 means The request is finished and response is ready. So when the ready state is 4, the client can receive the response from the server. The response from the server may be either in a text format, that is in a string format, or in a XML data. So if we want to receive the response in the text format, then we can use the response text property of XML HTTP request object. Suppose we want to retrieve the response in XML data, then we can use the response XML property of XML HTTP request object. The one more thing, the status property, it returns the status of the communication. If it is 200, then the response the request is processed successfully. In that case, the status is OK. So if the response status is 200, then the request is processed successfully. Suppose the next property is status text. It indicates the status of the client server communication. If it is OK, that it means its value is OK. So this is the way to assign a function to a on ready state change property of HTTP XML HTTP request object. So the object name dot on ready state change equal to function. This is the function definition. Here we are considering if request object dot ready state is equal to 4. That is, the request is processed and response is ready. And the status is 200. That is, the request is successfully completed. So the successful response can be retrieved through the request object response text property and is assigned to the object, that is the object in the client web page object in a HTML property.